What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. I got nothing. Doing well. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. I was looking through the lineup for this week, and there's a lot of interesting stuff we're going to be talking about, but nothing that really felt super inspiring to me. Maybe it's just
Ooh.
where I'm at as we're falling into this fall after COVID summer, feeling
Yeah, sure.
especially because you put out this great video, a spoiler-free Tenant review after we recorded our last podcast, and now I'm just jealous that I can't see Tenet, and I'm super bummed. I hear everybody's
Mm,
talking about it. I don't know. I'm feeling
yeah.
a little low
Emphasis
this
on the
week.
spoiler free. It's really hard to talk about stuff so
Yeah.
fucking vaguely.
um, well, this week we have a couple of music projects, we have a TV project, and two movies to talk about. But before we jump right in, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to follow the podcast any way that you want to. And lastly, give us that 5-star rating and review on iTunes if you can. We're going to start this week, though, with a artist that we missed the drop, honestly.
Yeah.
Aluna Francis from the musical duo Aluna George dropped her first solo project, Renaissance. Not this past week, 2 weeks ago, and why don't we do a quick temperature check on Aluna George? Where are you at with them as a group?
Yeah, big fan. I've always really liked them. Got two albums out. I think they got some shit that hits, man. That last album I remember from 2016. I liked a lot of those deep cuts. Not About Love, Mean What I Mean, Mediator. I, it just it's that UK dance music. So this is really good,
Mm-hmm.
and I always thought Aluna was a pretty good voice on those kind of songs. You think of her on White Noise with Disclosure, and obviously you like it. Their debut single became a huge hit after the DJ Snake remix. So
Mm-hmm.
they've had a lot of success at this point, and uh, been waiting obviously for something, and then leading up to this Aluna solo album, you learn the reasons why it's a solo album. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, disappointed we missed it last week because been a big fan.
Yeah, similar to I usually think about Luna George and Disclosure similarly. I think
Hmm.
they give off very similar vibes. I think they've even done a couple of collaborations together. So it's definitely a group that I've always been into, and Luna's vocals have really jumped out. Hearing this solo project, did you feel like there was anything on here that really separated Aluna, the solo artist, from Aluna George, the duo?
Not that much. In the press leading up to this, she talked about the reason why she separated, just for this time anyway, from George Reed, the other half of the duo, is because she wanted to make EDM that is open about its black roots, which is something that's not very common in EDM. It's a scene that very much has a genesis in like black club music in Europe, but there's not a lot of black people active in it. And she just thought that'd be best if she came at this on her own without George. Yet I still feel like I got more African influence from Disclosure last week than I did
Mm-hmm.
on this. So this I liked it because it reminded me of what I like about Aluna George, but I don't know if it totally gets where she was hoping it would, in terms of like showing off the influences more openly.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, especially after we've heard a couple of artists that are really infusing that African influence into their music, Disclosure in that EDM way, Burner Boy a couple weeks back in a more hip hop way. I didn't really hear anything that would make me hear this album if you didn't tell me it was Luna George and it was just Luna on her own, that would say, oh yeah, I could definitely hear that she was the one directing this project. I actually felt like this would have been a really strong Aluna George album just in general. I think some of the production on this is really, really interesting, and makes a couple of these songs really pop. But I think there's also a lot of songs that just kind of were pretty forgettable, things I wouldn't find myself going back to so much. I think one song I really wanted to highlight, that kind of had a little bit more like that island influence maybe than that
Mm-hmm.
African influence was The Recipe,
Ooh,
which I thought was a really strong track from it. I also really liked the
Tronada.
production. Oh, that was Kate Shonda. I was gonna say there were some moments on here I was like, that sounds a bit like something we've heard before from our friend Kay. I also really liked the Warrior, which it has like this trancy echoey like chorus to it that I just thought was really popped and really made that stand out. Any tracks that stood out to you that you really enjoyed, found yourself going back to?
Yes, I really enjoyed both Sneak and
Mm,
Envious. Both reminded me of what I like about Aluna a lot. If you look
yeah,
at this, liner notes on this album, Aluna did co-produce many of the songs, and of course did most of the co-writing as well. But you have Scott Storch on Surrender. You have Kate Tronada, of course. You have Noah Breakfast on Off Guard, previously of Chitty Bang. You have Lido a few times. So there's some names. S.G. Lewis as well. So I think it's pretty interesting, and I think Aluna's message and the way she's been talking about electronic music and trying to be a active voice in making EDM more inclusive, I think is obviously really admirable and needs to continue. Um, apart from her and Kate Tronada and Flying Lotus, there's really not a whole lot of black people at the top of the game, as
no, there's
sad
not.
as that is, despite how dominant black people are in many other aspects of popular music right now. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope that continues. But yeah, I mean, this reminded me a lot of Luna George, so I guess that's a good thing, and definitely looking forward to what's next from her. I think Luna's just a, generally speaking, a pleasant voice to hear on most songs she's on.
Definitely, and I think working with those kind of producers is the way to go. Keep um, finding that sound that works for you. Keep finding ways to build the influence and the vision into your
Mm-hmm.
music, and she's gonna be fine. I think she's a star for sure. So Aluna, I think Renaissance is an album worth checking out, especially if you do like Luna George's work. Let's talk about an artist I really was not looking forward to checking out. Tekashi 6ix9ine drops Tattletales, his first album post, I guess, getting out of the feds. Like what?
Yeah.
Uh,
Is he still on house arrest, or he was briefly on house arrest after COVID got him out of jail, and maybe it's done now. It's about to be done, something like that. I don't know. But
yeah.
yeah, he's out in the world again, and he's not going to let you forget it. That's for sure.
And I mean, we talked a little bit about him since he's gotten out on house arrest. I think we talked about how his Instagram Live broke
Yep.
the Instagram Live record for most
Yeah.
people viewing it. We talked about
By a
Nicki
big margin.
Minaj. Yeah, we talked about Nicki Minaj collaborating with him, and that song appears on this album.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess like when you think about Takashi, what's just like your general opinion of him as an artist?
I mean, he's terrible. He sucks. He's so detestable as a person, and
Yeah.
the worst part about it is that he gets success, and he knows this. He gets success and maintains his brand by being a disrespectful troll. And either his fans don't realize they're being duped, or they don't care and they actually like it, and it's just the worst kind of thing. He's someone with really no artistic style. I think when I think of his music, I think of his early sound when he would just give a really aggressive, fast, flow. And he's
Mm-hmm.
getting away from that a lot since those early songs like Gummo. So I think he's even getting away from his strengths. And even when that original stuff wasn't really even that much of a strength, more so a trademark. So strictly musically speaking, I think TattleTales is pretty terrible. Um, but like it's also well in line with what he's trying to do. TattleTales. Honestly, it's a good name for this. He's openly about, yeah, I'm a snitch. Fuck you. What are you gonna do about it? And like that's the thing. I think depending on how old you are and how you come about it, a lot of people kind of sympathize with 6ix9ine and how he turned evidence and didn't owe these people anything. And I think it's probably a bit murkier than it might seem. Like a lot of other rappers are like, oh, he's a snitch, blah blah blah, but they had no problem with him being a asshole troll before that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think surprisingly, Waka Flocka actually had some really like, astute observations on 6ix9ine and where people stand on him. But yeah, he sucks, and it's frustrating that he finds so much success and he's doing it on a independent distribution label. He's not even signed to anybody. Generally, very few people are actually associating him, with the exception of Nicki. Still perplexing to me why that is, and also fucking Akon. Like, why Akon? Why do we do this, man?
That was actually the first note I wrote down is just Akon why. But then you also think about where has Akon been the
Yeah,
last couple of years? He
I mean, I
needed
get him
something.
chasing coattails more than Nicki. Nicki didn't need him, and Trolls is a way worse song than Fifi was too. So it's like he didn't need to collab again with this guy.
And
Uh,
I mean, not to like compare the two on any sort of like awfulness scale, but didn't Akon also have accusations of hooking up with underage girls and things like that?
Maybe, not sure. I know
I
he
don't
threw a
know.
kid off stage once way back in the day. That was
Ugh.
kind of funny. But yeah, maybe. I'm not sure.
That was kind of funny. It's I, listening to this album, I think I can understand if you are just totally into pop, don't really want to interrogate the music that you listen to in any way, why you could like this album and why you could like some of the music he makes. I mean, this is very shallow, very much like this music sounds good, brings in decent production, has some
Right.
catchy hooks that you might call back to that bring up some nostalgia. But in the end, like there's just really not much below the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with that said, I will say I did find myself enjoying a couple of songs on this album. I thought they sounded okay, and he did probably enough just to kind of keep himself in that limelight. And he's the type of person that the controversy surrounding him, his
Yeah,
whole aesthetic, like if you can see Dave's background, he has these rainbow colored hair,
of
and
course.
um, that's really what propels him. Is I think he reaches out to that like Gen Z type crowd that is kind of
Mm-hmm.
not really looking to look beyond like
Yeah, all
just
cloud is good
what's right in
cloud.
their face. Exactly. Um, I'm looking up to see what this Akon controversy I was thinking of was, but
Yeah.
tell me what songs are worked for you on the album or
Well,
what didn't.
just one other thing on that note. Little Dirk and Little TJ both commented that 6ix9ine's camp offered them money to continue to publicly feud and troll 6ix9ine. Like it is a playbook that 6ix9ine and his team are using, and it's so obvious. But again, some people like it or just don't care about it. I mean, I think my favorite song on this is probably the debut single, the comeback single, Gooba. I think the I'm mad, you're mad, I'm back, you're mad, I'm back, big mad, he's mad, she's mad. That's pretty catchy. I think it actually has
Mm-hmm.
TikTok appeal. It's a good meme format, I guess. That one's good for that kind of stuff from 6ix9ine because it's the aggressive stuff is more trademark stuff. I think the stuff that's just abjectly terrible is when he does this really washed out auto tune and or tries to do singing. Like he
Mm-hmm.
collaborated with Anuel AA on Dummy Boy, and he's doing some more like late reggaeton on this, and he's just really bad at it. Like that stuff sucks. But also like songs like Punani, like there's just some fucking terrible hooks on this too. It's like the shallow repetitive bars is one thing, but if people don't like the hooks, what are they gonna like about the song? Like if there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing catchy about it besides like super super repetitive choruses and hooks, it's like I don't see the appeal. So I think this is his worst project.
It's funny. I think the moments I liked most from this are actually Akon, which is really interesting to
I mean,
think
Locked
about in
Up's a
retrospect.
banger. I love
Locked
Locked
Up
Up.
is such a good song, and just hearing Akon singing that again. I mean, granted, it's on an album of a person I don't really support very much, but like, it was cool to hear. And then also
Yeah,
hearing him sing the Bryan Adams song "Heaven" on Leah or Leah.
yeah.
I thought was pretty interesting. I also thought Nicki sounded pretty good on her
She's
verse.
brought it 2 for 2 with her 6ix9ine collaborations. She
So
really
it's
has. She
and
killed on Fifi.
I also thought the phone recording one GTL. I thought that
Yeah,
was like decent, and it's like
funny as
actually
shit. Yeah.
like yeah, it's actually like him like doing something. I, I don't know. He also had the "Oh My God, Ronnie" on AVA, Ava from the Jersey Shore, which I thought was actually pretty funny, like thing to include. But just like all the notes I have here are things that aren't actually things
Mhm.
6ix9ine is doing, but that other people are putting in the album or bringing to the
Yeah,
album.
I think "Oh My God, Ronnie" is Ronnie J's DJ tag actually.
Oh,
So
really?
that wasn't even 6ix9ine. Let me
Oh,
check that.
geez.
Yeah, that was
Um,
Ronnie J. Yeah, that's all that was.
yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So, Ronnie J, get on more tracks just so I can hear that. But yeah, there's just not much here.
No.
So I don't know. We'd recommend not listening to TattleTales if you can, but
This is likely to go number one as well, which in a sense is impressive given that he doesn't have major label distribution, but he has a brand, he has momentum, so we'll see what happens.
someone that hadn't dropped an album in 3 years, Big Sean. We've heard him on a couple of features. We heard him on an album very recently. Who was it? Was it Choppa? Was he on? He was on with somebody. But uh, Big
Not sure.
Sean, we've been doing a temperature check with everybody else so far. Why don't we do one with Big Sean? I mean, if you had asked me early 2010s where I was at with Big Sean, I probably would have said up and coming. Dude
Mm-hmm.
is probably primed to be a star within the rap field. He's very much in line with good music and really like
Became a star, no doubt about that part.
and then it just feels like he hasn't really been able to keep up with that early 2010s pace of climbing, growing bigger, and it
Mm.
feels a bit like he's met this plateau in my book. I haven't really felt like he sounds super inspired on a lot of the things he's been doing in the last couple of years. He hadn't even dropped an album since 2017. With I Decided, he also did an album with Metro Boomin, Double or
Yeah.
Nothing that
The
year.
Metro one was very bad, by the way.
So I mean, Big Sean, where are you at with him?
Yeah, so having listened to Detroit 2, the sequel to his acclaimed 2012 mixtape, one of the probably most heralded mixtapes that's still not available on digital streaming services. Great tape. I have a lot of songs that I download from that. I listened to those this weekend. They still sound really good. I think probably one of the most notable ones is this one called "All I Know" featuring Wiz Khalifa, which is over the beat of "Helicopter" by Block Party. So you understand why
Mm,
this mixtape has not been cleared.
right, yeah.
But anyway, I now I'm starting to think because I like Detroit too. I'm starting to think about Big Sean the way I think about Meek, someone that had
Hmm.
this really ascendant career, jump start into mainstream rap stardom in his early 20s, and then really met a kind of critical creative malaise in his mid 20s, and then kind of bounced back as he turned 30 and is now kind of approaching like young OG status. I think there's starting to be a lot more reverence for Big Sean in the game the way there is for Meek Mill. And that's really cool to me because I was really in on early Sean. It's kind of funny to revisit some of his really early stuff from like the Finally Famous era because a lot of it does kind of sound dated. It reminds me a lot of kind of the last vestige of the blog era in rap, pre-trap, pre-modern
Mhm.
streaming. The rise of Meek, the rise of Drake when Drake was still rising and not yet at the top. Cuddy still very active. The rise of Wiz, that time. I have a lot of fond memory for that, obviously, 2010, 2011. And as you said, Sean had went away for several years, basically an eternity in rap terms. But the last time we really heard him, I Decided in the Metro collab, not really that great. I think the only time I'd really liked a Big Sean performance in several years was that verse on the Cash Doll album, Ready Set. I think he actually was really great on that. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have high expectations for Detroit 2 or the next Big Sean album until he called it Detroit 2 because that kind of came across as a statement of intent to me and a messaging to the long-term fans that you should care about this project. And I think despite, it's too long, 70 minutes, but I liked it a lot. This is some of the best I think Big Sean sounded since Dark Sky Paradise 5 years ago.
Well, I would agree. I think this is probably the best he sounded in a very long time. Still, I found myself fairly bored, and when it's 70 minutes, you really got to be bringing the heat to
Mm-hmm.
keep yourself engaged for that amount of time. But I did feel like some of the features on here really worked, and I also felt like um, a couple of the songs, Sean sounded more inspired than I had heard him in a while, and I think the clear standout to me from this is the song Deep Reverence, which
Mhm.
has Nipsey Hussle on it. um, it just felt like hearing him talk about his relationship with Kendrick and working through that,
Right.
hearing
Of
him talk
course.
about suicidal thoughts, hearing him talk about how he reached this level of fame, but he really didn't feel satisfied with his life. I felt like that was the personal type of Sean you want to hear, whereas like a lot of what his features had become in recent years was just him like bragging about how much money he had, bragging about this or that, and that braggadocious Sean just kind of, I think, has become uh, uninspiring, uninteresting to me.
It always
Hearing
seemed
him,
kind of corny from him.
yeah,
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. It's not like he's
hmm
doing it any differently than someone else, but for some reason, I don't know. It felt genuine. Like the whole come up of his career was him chasing fame, the finally famous mixtapes, right? And then gets fame, finally famous the album, which I thought was pretty good. Um, but then the second album's called Hall of Fame, and that was probably his worst project. And it's like once Sean achieved that like dream after because he has like a
hmm
superhero origin story, right? Getting plucked up by Kanye after a well-timed feature in front of him. It's a great come up, but yeah, it like that critical malaise. Like I just feel like he didn't know what to say, and I think he had attempted to be lyrical in times, but I just never really wanted to hear it from him. And I still think on this, sometimes like the lyrical message, I still am not super down with. Look, I think Lucky Me has been getting a lot of highlights. That's where he talks about getting diagnosed with a heart condition at like
mm
19. Um, but then like the takeaway and like really like open, stuff again, similar to talking about his mental health on this. But he also talks about how he's like not about Western medicine because he just used some like holistic like supplements to cure this condition. And I was like, all right, well, I don't know if we need to go with this conclusion, but I'm happy
hmm
you're being open about this today.
no, I totally agree, and I also feel like his delivery at a lot of times comes across as either like lackadaisical or just not super fun or
Mm-hmm.
engaging. Like he's pretty much monotone. It feels like a lot of the time. But on this album, I think you hear him bringing a little bit more feeling to what he's delivering. Um, other than Deep Reverence, what other tracks stood out to you, or what was
Mm-hmm.
things you liked?
Yeah, yeah. So I agree that I think just about all the features really felt good. You know, um,
Mm-hmm.
didn't really care for Travis on Lithuania all that much, but I thought
Mm-hmm.
Sean was good on that. But body language, you got Ty Dolla $ign and Janae Aiko,
Yeah.
two of the most reliable, consistent R&B presences the past decade. Obviously, Big Sean and Janae have a deeper relationship than that. We get the 2088 comeback later on, but I thought that one was really good. Honestly, though, one of the big standouts to me was Wolves with Post Malone. I did not expect to like that, but I thought Sean, the hook, man, like that is a different kind of feel from him than he's given
Mm-hmm.
before. I thought that really worked, and the Post Malone feature actually felt like it was made for this song, and they had like good chemistry on this, which is obviously not always the case. Like if you copy and paste the Post Malone verse, it can sound really out of place. Listen to the Tap In
Mm-hmm.
remix that's out now by Saweetie. Don't know why Post is on that song. It sounds terrible. But on Wolves, I was like, wow, this is interesting to me. This is a new path.
Yep.
Cool. Um, and then there's other moments as well I liked. It's funny, like on feed, you have like briefly like use of Tyler the Creator vocals in the background. And on Don Life, he does it again with Meek vocals very briefly. So I like some of those touches. And the baddest actually stood out to me because of that beat. I was like, wow, this reminds me of like a 1940s movie villain like score. Like here's the villain, dun dun dun. And like I was like, oh, did Bauer make this? Like this sounds really cool. Um, and then yeah, I think some of the other songs still work pretty good. Like Respected, I like Sean on that. I like Guard Your Heart with Anderson Paak. It's really nice to see early Mac and Key Wayne on this, longtime Big Sean collaborators.
Mm-hmm.
Even Wale on Guard Your Heart, I thought was pretty good. Not always the case with Wale. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked Wolves. I I was really impressed with how they played off each other in that, and they just both seem to be bringing a ton of energy to that song. I also, I go a little bit more for the more melodic, like easy listening type stuff, and I thought "Guard Your Heart" with Anderson .Paak, kind of
Mhm.
singing the chorus and the hook on that was really, really a big standout for me. I agree with you about Travis on Lithuania. I kind of like got bored with him during that song. Just him doing more of the same. How did you
Yeah,
feel about the Wayne feature though on Don Life?
that's all right.
Yeah,
Um,
that
I
was one
thought,
of the ones that didn't work for me.
yeah, I mean, in general, I'm kind of out on Lil Wayne these days, and like in terms of like we got a 21 song album, maybe we cut them all with Lil Wayne. I don't know if we need this, but again, I thought Sean was pretty good on it. Like I think generally speaking, he's trying to bring it as best he can on this. You have those three interludes from Dave Chappelle, Erica Badu, and Stevie Wonder. I thought the Chappelle one in particular is probably the most memorable. That's the first one.
Hmm.
Him kind of talking about his experience being a comic in Detroit, um, and the Detroit vibe is something that like it's been like consistent that Big Sean reps Detroit in his music, but I don't know if we've ever really seen him really try and highlight Detroit all that much apart from the Detroit One mixtape until you get, of course, the Friday Night Cipher on this, which brings me back to Detroit versus Everybody on Eminem's label compilation Shady XV. So it's kind of the sequel to that. And it's kind of cool to see some like the new, younger post Big Sean Detroit faces like T Grizzly and Cash Doll and 42 Doug. And wish we had Danny Brown on this. Wish we had TJX6 on this, but still impressive cipher. I mean, at 9 minutes long, like most ciphers, not something you're gonna listen to all that much, but it's always kind of cool, just as like a event posse cut
Yeah,
creation.
the Chappelle story about being too high to deliver his set and just bombing and seeing what it was Danny Brown, right, who was like
Yeah,
walking out the back at the end. It just really made him laugh. Just that was a great story. I think overall, my expectations going to this were fairly low, and I definitely
mm-hmm.
left way more satisfied than I expected. I do feel like at times the production could have been a little bit snappier. Like I feel like a couple of songs feel
Sure.
like they're a little bit underwhelming sonically, but Big Sean does want to start his own record label now. He was
Yeah,
planning to, so we'll
good
see.
music's fucking dead, bro. There's
Yeah,
nothing left.
I mean
Um,
it's been dead though.
yeah, of course. I will say that like again, like I'm happy that Big Sean is seeming to grow and he's become a more thoughtful guy in his later years. But I mean, if you're looking for bangers, you're looking for hits. Dark Sky Paradise still the place to go. Like we don't have a Blessings on here. We don't have a All Your Fault. I don't fuck with you. So depends what you want from Sean. He's got a lot of music out at this point. So uh, happy he's changing it up and looking forward. So that's good.
Speaking of looking forward, let's look back at The Boys season 1 and then talk about the newest episodes that dropped, the first 3 of season 2. We didn't talk about The Boys when they dropped. Heard a lot about it. Heard a lot of good things about the show. So we caught up this past weekend, or at least I did. I think you were already caught up by this weekend. Dave, just give me your general thoughts on The Boys season 1, and then I want to kind of parlay that into where we're at with season 2 at this point.
Yeah, I liked Boys season one a lot. I came to it late, which I think a lot of people kind of came to it late, at least like people like critically minded, because you get the pitch, right? Oh, superhero TV show from a established IP. Wow, heard that before. That doesn't sell me like it might have sold me years ago, right? Superheroes the best thing going, right? Like it's the golden goose. So like that doesn't immediately grab me, right? But like people just really rode for a very consistent, warm reception to the show, and the Boys season one is memorable and good because I think it just does things unlike other uh, shows, movies in the genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the grisly ultra violence stands out, but I do feel like it's actually earned because this is a show that's committed to being dark and committed to having like a nihilistic point of view. Not always the most fun thing to watch, but it always makes sense. And I also think it's quite committed. You have a cast that all really kind of buy into their place in this story. So I think season one that first episode in particular, I think that's a really good hook. Like if you
Mhm.
watch season of episode 1, you're probably either in or you're out. You can
Yep.
know right away. And in terms of just kind of a basic, kind of simple thought, right? What would happen if the Flash fucking ran through someone and murdered
Mm.
them
Yep.
or manslaughtered them, right? Like, how would you feel? What would that do to you? Like, it's a
Mhm.
very simple idea, but it's not something that you've been explored that much, at least on the screen. So, yeah, I was immediately hooked, and I think season 1 is honestly really good.
And I think what it does that the Marvel movies don't always get to, like, I think they dance around this concept, but they don't really get to, is how a lot of times these superheroes, though some are gifted with the powers, a lot of times the other ones are have it thrust upon them. You think
Mm-hmm.
about Captain America. Steve Rogers wants to be the super soldier and volunteers for that. But then, really, the only thing we see of the conflict for him in this is that he lives forever and the people he cares about die. Eventually that changes as he goes back in time. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Infinite or the Endgame. But
There you go.
yeah, I really think the idea of what does it mean to like be a superhero in this world where these powers are given to you by your parents or you're created in a lab is a lot more
Right.
interesting than
Of
like
course.
Superman comes from another planet and
Yeah.
that's a bit played out. And I feel like that kind of character development helps me to understand the actual villains of the show, which I feel like most people are pretty somewhere in the middle in the show, which I think is also great. The characterization, it all makes sense to me, and I think they
Yep.
go pretty deep on most characters. But someone like Homelander,
Mm-hmm.
who is just totally devoid of any sort of nurture or love in his life, it kind of shows why he would be this narcissistic sociopath, and psychopath, and like having these godlike powers has led him to just be this incredibly cruel being, who's manipulating and controlling everything in his life because that's how
Mm-hmm.
he felt. And then kind of bringing Aya Cash's character into season 2, which we're going to get to a little bit more in a second, I think is a great foil against that, as he's kind of like he has to kind of confront himself almost in a way in this other person. It's
Right.
pretty interesting. I also really liked how they had the dynamic of the non superhero people who are kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the villains, so to speak, in the
Yeah.
first way. Carl
Villains to the
Urban, Jack
public.
Quaid, right?
Yeah.
But are actually like the good guys, and like that
Right.
dynamic I thought was really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, Homelander is honestly a really terrifying villain.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like you said, feels really earned. You
Yeah.
understand why he is the way he is, but also the show does a really good job of just kind of highlighting some basic tension about like, yeah, if you're like going up against this dude, like odds are you're fucked,
Yep.
And I think it did a good job of like explaining reasons why Homelander didn't just immediately find them and murder them all, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But and like the whole thing about the Seven and the Voight Corporation or Vought Corporation,
Yep.
about how superheroes are an industry that can be
Mm-hmm.
haggled and withheld over people, and it's all a brand and like it's everything, it's like if Amazon had superheroes, right? It's like it's again, it's just a simple premise, but the show does it in such a committed way from the jump that it all just really makes sense. And it's just honestly, like again, it's a dark world, but I think it's a world that's really interesting to be in. So,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny because like you look at the superheroes, right? It's like, okay, we have evil Superman and Wonder Woman and Flash and
Mm-hmm.
Aquaman, and I guess Starlight's like Supergirl. Like
Mm-hmm.
like you have obvious analogs to more famous superheroes, but like again, like that's not really the point of the show. So
Right.
I find it really really fun.
No, I think it's great, and I actually think having like the main characters who are obviously Homelander, Starlight, Huey,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Butcher, those are like the four that's centered around. But then the side characters in this, I think about someone like the Deep, played by Chase Crawford, who the way his story develops,
Yeah.
he's kind of this. Me Too movement type of avatar about being on the one side of being the awful people who are using this power to victimize and
Yeah.
brutalize sexually women and other people, but then has it happen to him and like how he's dealing with his own mental health issues related to that. Or you have someone like the Flash or A
A
Train,
Train.
the
Mm-hmm.
speedster, who is kind of like this performance enhancing drugs, like and
Yeah.
the pressure of pro
Right.
sports like
Can't become
Avatar.
washed.
Right. So it's very, I think, interesting to see how these side characters kind of play out different issues that are highlighted in culture today. I think it's really smartly done because those keep my attention as B and C plots, but they don't ever, I feel like, take away from where the show is going. Um, just like out of curiosity, what characters do you find yourself liking the most, or like looking forward to seeing the most?
Uh, I guess Starlight's probably the most likable, the most like genuinely good
Hmm.
presence on the show. Um, Huey's not far off from that too, but of course he has killed now. You
Yes.
know, obviously translucent is no more.
Hmm.
Um, yes, I guess Starlight. You know, like Erin Moriarty had a small role in Jessica Jones season one. That's how I first knew about her. But I think she's really good presence on the show.
Hmm.
I do enjoy her a lot. And honestly, um, I forgot her name. The head of Vought who kind of
Yeah.
nurtured Homelander, quote unquote, in season one, who then he killed her at the end.
Hmm.
Kind of looks like Kim Dickens. They could definitely be sisters to
Yes.
me. I really liked her. I thought she was good and kind of showing the office politics of the corporation and whatnot. And then
Yeah.
even playing off Giancarlo Esposito a little bit in the finale of season one. I liked her a lot as well.
Yeah, I agree. I was really disappointed actually when she was killed off, although I thought it made a lot of sense. I really like Kamiko, who is this like superhero who is kind of created by Homelander dropping this chemical or this this chemical weapon throughout the world and
Yeah.
kind of thrust into these powers and then was like a super terrorist, so to speak, or working with this Chinese terrorist organization before she was
Yeah.
captured. I thought that was just a really interesting storyline, and then how that kind
Mm-hmm.
of starts to play out in the first three episodes of season two. I really love her arc so far.
Yeah, I think that's a really great, really again another intriguing idea the show presents. That, oh yeah, well when you have this corporation that has such a stranglehold on society that's about to infiltrate the military, yeah, it makes sense that they also would create the supervillains. That way they could keep
Mm-hmm.
the forward momentum of their company and their power. You know, it's like
Mm-hmm.
another terrifying prospect, but it makes total sense.
Yep, absolutely. And also how they're like trying to work their way into the military industrial complex is, I think, a
Hmm.
really a cool like uh, underlying storyline in all
Yeah.
this. Um, all right, so season one, definitely, I think we both were pretty big fans. How have you liked the first three episodes of season two so far? I've seen mixed reception online.
I mean, yeah, I like it so far. I like that the dynamic has changed a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Killed off the head of the corporation. But I think more importantly, the boys are now openly, publicly known as fugitives. The Seven is actively seeking them out. Homelander, of
Mm-hmm.
course, at the front of that. I think that was an important and necessary choice. They couldn't be fighting back against the Seven in the shadows again. It would start to become implausible that Homelander and crew just didn't seek them out, right? And like A
Mm-hmm.
Train's incompetence let them off. It's like so that needed to change. And also, I Cash, she's of course a welcome presence. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm in so far. I'm happy that the show is going to week for the remainder of the season because I think it's a show that is popular enough and it's good that the conversation can be stretched out versus, of course, all of the season dropping at once like season one did.
Mm-hmm. I think the first three episodes are doing a lot of table setting for this season. Um, you know, Homelander with his son, and I guess the mother of the son. We'll say
Mm-hmm.
the butcher's wife.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting dynamic, and certainly something is going to come of that. I think the setup of like Huey versus the butcher, and them kind of each needing to like adapt a little bit of each other's thinking is a cool setup and something that you're seeing come to fruition already. But yeah, I think Aya Cash is the clear like standout to me in this. It seems like she's going to be this pain in the side of Homelander in some way. I'm sure that probably won't work out great for her, or they'll end up teaming up and be like this crazy supervillain duo. But I think that's really interesting. I do. I am curious a bit about what's going to happen with A Train. You know, it seems like he's having like some heart issues,
Mhm.
or some health issues, and I'm also interested to see what happens with the Deep. I think a storyline I'm a little bit out on is Queen Maeva or Queen Maeve.
Maeve, yeah. Yeah, I
Hasn't
agree.
totally grabbed me, but we'll see where that goes. Overall, a lot of table setting, but I'm still in, even if it's a little slower than
Mhm.
last season.
So this show has already been ordered for season 3. I'll be curious to see how long the show keeps up with this like direct conflict between the boys and the Seven, because like there's already hints that some members of the Seven um, maybe wish they were better people than they have acted in the past. Maeve is probably the leader of that. But like how long will Vought
Hmm.
and the Seven be this kind of overtly uh, evil, negative presence due to Homelander? You know, I'm curious to see how long we keep that up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing if the show will kind of steer into where a lot of superhero shows go or superhero IP go, which is like these
Mhm.
huge CGI fuckfest, basically, you know, or if it's
Right.
going to kind of keep down on that human level. Because it does seem like in order for the boys to be really staying a compelling and worthy uh, opponent to Homelander, they're going to have to get some of the superheroes on their side to fight back against him. But I think that's going to lead to things just being these CGI fights that maybe
Sure.
aren't going to be as interesting. Gonna be cool to see how they kind of balance that. But if you have watched The Boys, drop a comment. Let us know your thoughts. You can hit us up on Twitter at Nowstalgia Pod. Let's talk about a couple movies real quick, though, Dave. I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Charlie Kaufman dropped on Netflix. Charlie Kaufman, interesting guy. So he really made it big when he was the writer for the script of Being John Malkovich.
Mm-hmm.
He's directed movies like Singing Doce, New York. Probably my favorite movie that he's ever been a part of is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless
Mm-hmm.
Mind.
Oscar
One of
winner.
my one of my favorite movies just in general. I think it's really well done, but super weird. And this is based off a 2016 novel by Ian Reid of the same name. He takes a lot of liberties with this, though. From everything I've read, it seems like he takes the third act, which by Ian Reid's book is pretty straightforward, and
Mm-hmm.
he goes in a totally different direction with this. This is a very dense movie, dense,
It's a
and
lot.
I think it kind of left me feeling like I need to watch this like 3 or 4 more times to get it.
That's actually a common refrain. People say it's a very rewarding rewatch, but I don't know if I'm feel compelled to actually bother.
That's the thing, is I don't know, it's so dense, I don't know if I want to go back and rewatch it. Sounds like you're in the same camp, though.
Yeah, well, because on the surface, there's a lot of things I like. I like there's really only 4 characters in the movie, right? You have Jesse Buckley and Jesse Plemons as this kind of lifeless romantic couple, right? There's really
Mhm.
no juice in this relationship, and as the title suggests, Jesse Buckley's character is thinking of ending things, and it's kind
First
of
line of the movie.
premeditating this, right?
Mhm.
And the kind of the banter they have in the beginning of the movie is all in this car, right? Like the banter they have is pretty good, I think, just because they're both such talented performers, and Plemons in particular, again, just kind of showing his dependable nature as a you know side piece in any movie, any role, really.
Mhm.
Um, between trading off between these kind of mundane small talk and then also like existential, like really personal thoughts, right? And then we get 2 other characters joining, right? His parents, played by David Thewlis and Tony Collette, and it's like at that point, like the movie gets much more surreal in terms of what's actually happening, what's not, what's in the head, and it's a lot. And then of course interspersed with this janitor character throughout. I just kind of offhand thought about who the janitor might be in the beginning. Apparently, there's more breadcrumbs to see about that identity if you rewatch it. But I mean, it's revealed at the end. But like, yeah, the existential nature stuff to me about I don't know, aging and being happy with who you are. I don't know. Like, I don't know if that really landed for me all that much. Like you said, it's dense. It's a lot. This movie, it's asking a lot of the audience.
About halfway through the movie, I started to kind of piece together everything that was going on. And I wouldn't say I like hit the nail on the head with all of it, but I was like, okay, so, and this is, I guess, going to be a bit of a spoiler, but Jesse Plemons is probably the avatar of this janitor who's like, kind of reflecting on his life in some way. I think the psychological elements of this are pretty interesting when you go back and kind of think about that. Jesse Buckley's character is not one actual person, but more of this like creation of this person's loneliness. I think the line that really stood out most to me is like, as you get older, you either like get married, or you either get a wife, or you have this wife shaped loneliness in your heart, or something like this, or it was like a partner shaped loneliness. And that felt kind of like the crux of the movie in a way, was this person reflecting on all they've lost, some self-loathing. Seems like media has been kind of the way that they've understood their life, and you kind of, I think there's little hints dropped in terms of some of the books and shows, and then the third act totally devolves into this like dance, classical dance. I don't know, it's very strange.
It's like a fight.
And then there's this performance by Jesse Plemons at this award at the end. It's so strange.
Shout out to old makeup.
Yeah, and then there's also that I don't know if it's a flashback scene or like that like fake movie trailer with Robert Zemeckis or whatever it is, which is really
so I will say that part stood out to me. This movie was shot around my hometown. I've actually been to that diner, the Red Line Diner in Fishkill, New York. So that was cool to me.
It's actually interesting because one of the reasons I perked up at that part after watching The Boys all weekend is the girl who's like in that fake movie trailer is also in The Boys. But I think if you really like sit down and think about it, all the parts make sense. But in order for this movie, I think, to really work, it needs to be a movie that is enjoyable. And I don't really know if I found many parts like super, super enjoyable. I found a lot of it very heavy and weird. And I actually was like, is this shit about to become like a horror film? Because like, I can't handle this on a Sunday night at this point. I need something a little lighter for myself. So I guess overall, we're both kind of like, there's a lot here. You probably have to watch 2 or 3 times to really get it.
Right.
But
calibrate expectations.
Yeah, it might not be the sort of thing you want to go back and watch multiple times. So I'm thinking of ending things. Netflix, it's free. Check it out.
Shout out Jessie Buckley, though. She'll be joining David Thewlis and Jesse Plemons in the Fargo universe in season 4 coming out this fall.
I gotta say, all the acting in this I think is really well done. So shout out to them. Mulan also dropped this past weekend, although it cost some money to watch. You had to pay $30 on Disney Plus, which Dave and I split. That's why you find friends to share your accounts with. Disney.
No, we didn't. Don't admit that publicly.
But directed by Nikki Caro, who has directed a couple films.
Whale Rider.
Whale Rider, McFarlane USA. I'm going to give your friend Kai a bit of a shout out here. He tweeted and he said, Mulan was I. And I literally responded and said, yeah, it's like the definition of I. Like, if this was a GIF, this would be the Alonzo Mourning, like me shaking my head, then me like nodding my head. Like, it was just kind of very in the middle for me.
GIFs of all time.
Oh, that's a Hall of Famer. But yeah, I kind of left this movie being like, okay, it was fine. I don't know if I was paying the $30 straight up, if I would have found it worth it, but it was fine. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, similarly. I think it's perfectly entertaining, perfectly fine. There's lots of interesting aspects about it, about choices in the movie. Of course, there's a lot of politics associated with the movie at this point, which we have touched on in the past. And also, it's the latest entry in these Disney live action remakes, of course. Last year, Disney was 2 for 3 with them, right? Dumbo wasn't much of a hit, but Aladdin and especially Lion King were
Yeah.
tremendous hits. Of course, they're two of the most popular Disney Renaissance films. Mulan is not far behind in that regard either. So this was definitely anticipated. But I think it suffers from some serious faults, uh, and the meta nature to this movie is much more interesting than I think with the movie itself. Like
Mhm.
this is more inspired by the traditional story of Mulan, the Ballad
Yeah.
of Mulan, right? And in that regard, I think it's interesting to see like the villains are slightly tweaked, right? Now we don't have nebulous Huns, which are famous for attacking Romans, not Chinese, right? From the
Hmm.
cartoon. Now we actually have like Mongol invaders, which makes more sense, right?
Right.
But still, the colors, the fire, presence of fireworks like in the cartoon, like we're taking liberties with the historical accuracy, which is
Sure.
fine. Mulan's a myth, right? All good, but it does seem to westernize a lot of things about Chinese culture still. And if you look online on the Chinese social media site Duhan, sorry, which is kind of like a letterbox for all kinds of media, basically, it's getting some negative pans from Chinese people, probably Chinese people in other parts of the world that have access to the movie. It's releasing in China in theaters on September 11th, this Friday. Or of course pirating, and I think there's some concerns that Mulan will be heavily pirated leading up to the theater um, release. But either way, it seems that the westernization of things and kind of the overly reliance of talking about respecting your family's honor, man. Like it's like, okay, we get it. Like this is a cliche about Asian people. Like you don't have to hammer this home because it's also not like a foreign concept to like not disrespect your family. Like I think we got it, Some really serious hand holding with some of that stuff. But also, I think the thing that stood out to me the most was the presence of chi in
Hmm.
this movie. Again, like the whole like centering chi, like your inner like life essence or whatever. Not that complicated concept, but in this movie, it's like it's the fucking Force from Star Wars all of a sudden, and Mulan has like superpowers. Where the fuck
Hmm.
did that come from? And
Yeah.
like, and that was kind of the thing with me. It's like when we heard about this movie, no music. Okay, interesting. I've always said with these live action remakes, if you're gonna do them, cool, make changes. I don't want a clone. At least make changes that justify its existence. At least attempt to, right? No music. Okay, fine. You're really going for like the war epic, following the Ballad of Mulan. Cool. That's interesting to me. And then we see, oh, there's no Mushu in this. Of course, Eddie Murphy's portrayal as Mushu very similar to lots of other Disney like little sidekick characters like Zazu and Iago,
Timon,
Jimmy Cricket.
Pumbaa.
It's a
Yeah.
common thing in the animated Disney movies, right? Something to accompany the hero.
Hmm.
No Mushu. Maybe that kind of sucks, but yeah, they're kind of going for it
More
more,
realistic.
more realistic, more traditional. Oh, never mind. Mulan's fucking magical anyway.
Yep.
So I think that definitely rubs people the wrong way. I did see in a report that Mushu is not as popular in China as it
Hmm.
is here. I know Western audiences really have an affinity for Mushu, so I'm not sure how accurate that is. But yeah, that thing that kind of took me out of it, and then of course the presence of the witch lady, right?
Hmm.
Who, in a sense, is an interesting character, right? But you have this person who can transform into a hawk in this movie now. Total new creation for this remake. This is just some interesting choices. I think were not people didn't see these coming, and it's interesting because the witch is played by who?
Gong Li.
Yeah, one very, very famous Chinese superstar, and in general the cast is loaded. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think in her case, right, the witch, she was so obvious, right? Like it's either she's gonna portray the bad guy at the end and go all good, or she'll die doing it. Like
Hmm.
her like parallel with Mulan, like how they're both kind of kindred spirits, was so obvious from the jump,
Yep.
And again, this is for kids, but
Is it
it seemed pretty simple.
like I guess as I was like watching this, I just kind of thought like, who is the target here? Like I think what made Mulan such a popular film of the Disney Renaissance was one, it had a story that was unlike most others, where the female is not uh looking for the male to save her. It's they're looking, she's the one who's fighting and actually saving the males around her. She doesn't need someone else to give her that strength in a way. And in this, I mean, certainly that same message is there, but like the songs, the goofiness of Mushu, like all these elements, I thought that the humor I thought was a lot stronger in the animated one, which I thought
Yeah.
really made it appeal to kids. I I, I don't know if this appeals to children. I mean, there's not really anything like there's no sing along songs. I think the action's okay. It's inoffensive, but I don't think this appeals to adults either, or
Yeah.
even like teenagers. So like, I guess I kind of feel like, what's the audience that's going to be like, live action Mulan? That's mine. Like, it doesn't feel
Right.
like it's there.
I think in terms of the action, uh, it's not Nikki Caro's strength, but there's a lot of cutting with the action, especially when it's up close. So I don't think it looks amazing. It looks fine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I kind of wish we had less of the battle scenes, just because I feel like Mulan, the character, just needed more lines in this movie. Like
Mm-hmm.
she's kind of a, a weak presence to me. Like apart from when she's bonding with the other soldiers, and of course her scenes with her father at the beginning and end. Apart from those scenes, like I don't think that she makes an impression, which is disappointing because uh, Li Yufei is
Yeah.
a really famous, well accomplished Chinese actress. I think she's a really good piece of casting. They took a long time to cast Mulan in this movie, right? Like they actually delayed the original release date because it was taking long to get the movie started.
Mm-hmm.
They put a lot into this, and yet it just doesn't seem like she was underused. Which
Yeah.
is like, yeah, and like she looked like a badass as Mulan. That was cool, and now that was also part of the casting process. Like she definitely
Mm-hmm.
sells it, and that's certainly believable. But I just wish she spoke more. Just kind of a
Yeah.
weird complaint. Like I didn't have that complaint about Mena Massoud's Aladdin. He
Mm-hmm.
he he carries the film.
Yeah, totally. And in thinking about this cast, I mean, you have Donnie Yen,
Yeah,
Jet Li, Zima,
yeah.
even
Let's
Jason
go.
Scott Lee, Gong Lee, I thought was
Yeah,
fantastic. I mean, there's so much talent here, and there's so many people that I should be like, oh, that person killed that scene, and so much of it just fell so like blah to me. Like I was like, this is fine. I'm enjoying myself, kind of, but I'm also just
right,
a little bit like, where's the music? Where's like the funny parts?
right.
That balance didn't seem to really be there for me.
And the thing too is like if you want to go really hardcore into like the battle and the military stuff, that's cool. Like from the jump, we're kind of getting that like wuxia like Chinese like kung fu action, right? Like you think of like something like Crouching Tiger, but like the movie isn't shot well enough with that in mind to like kind of like really sell that stuff. Funny enough, like I didn't even recognize Jet Li as the Emperor.
Yeah.
That's effectively stunt casting.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, though, I did think he was gonna die. I kind of liked how that played out. That subverted my expectations a little bit. Uh, and Donnie Yen, I mean, everyone likes Donnie Yen. I feel like at this point,
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, uh, Jiang Wen was approached to direct this movie alongside Ang Lee. Jiang Wen, of course, played Baze in Rogue One, and
Mm-hmm.
alongside Donnie Yen. So that would have been cool Disney synergy if they got the Rogue One boys back at it again. Alas,
Right.
did not come to pass. Um, yeah, man. I perked up when Donnie Yen said "Tranquil as a forest, but on fire within." From "I'll Make a Man Out of You," the best Mulan song. You still get reflection in this briefly in the movie itself, and of course in the credits. That's the other really popular song from the movie. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely disappointed. That's for sure.
Yeah, just to touch on the music real quick, they did have instrumental versions playing behind some of the scenes where the
Mhm.
songs would have been in the
Yeah,
animated film, but I think overall, the shift away from it being a real remake into its own kind of version, just I don't think it really worked to the level that they were going for. It feels
right.
like it was just it's a very Disney thing, like they didn't want to take a risk too far one way or too far the other. And they just kind of made a very down the middle movie. It's kind of what the same story with Solo, where it was going to be this very
Sure.
out there type movie. And then they were like, no, let's rein
Mhm.
it back in and put it a little more down the middle. So
Yeah,
it's Disney, they don't want to hurt the brand.
yeah. shout out at the end, Ming Na Wen makes a cameo. She, of course, was
Mm,
the voice of the original Mulan. That
yep.
I actually did catch that. That was fun to see. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like you remember in the beginning, you get this like really honestly really pretty shot of Mulan. Was it on a horse watching these rabbits run? And like,
Yep.
the whole comment to her dad and her family is how like she couldn't tell who the male rabbit was from the female rabbit when they're running together. Like
Hmm.
I feel like that parallel an idea about Mulan as she's competent and happens to be a woman. Like for some reason that didn't like come across to me as well as it could have. I feel like that idea lands way better in the animated version.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
Also in this live action one, it's way less convincing that Mulan is like gonna be pretend to be a man and everyone's gonna believe it. Like maybe that's just your Faye's natural beauty as a real person versus an animated character. But for some reason, I was like, yeah, it still kind of looks a little feminine here.
Yep,
Like,
the whole time.
yeah, I did like that she doesn't kiss the soldier. She was kind of eye fucking at the end because I feel like that wasn't actually earned yet. It's kind of
Mhm.
like set up for a sequel that won't happen, But like,
Right.
it seems like and apparently they actually changed their mind. They actually did kiss, and test audiences didn't like it, so they changed it. I think that was the right call there. Um, yeah, though it's there's so much to talk about, like this choices, and you hate to do that with movies, but that's the case. So we've previously talked about all the political stuff with Hong Kong in
Hmm.
terms of this movie. You can check that out on youtube.com/nostalgiapod.
Stay
Boycott
plugging.
Mulan, that's the video name. We talked about that last year, but I think our thoughts are pretty similar on that. It's complicated and certainly not going to be going away, but I'm interested to see how this movie does in China and how that Chinese reception continues to be, because this is a movie that the Chinese government wants to promote, and the Hong
Hmm.
Kong loyalists are very much against. So interesting how that plays out. It's not yet concluded.
Well, Dave, I think that's going to do it for us. Go watch Mulan if you have the funds. I'm thinking of ending things. Maybe watch. And then the boys definitely check out, as well as the music, which you can catch our favorite songs from the projects we talked about, Detroit 2, TattleTales, and Renaissance, on our Nostalgia Best of 2020 playlist, which is on Spotify. And what should people be checking out for next week, David?
Two notable new HBO shows: The Third Day miniseries with Jude Law. That should be enough for you. And also, We Are Who We Are, this new HBO show from Luca Guadagnino. Very exciting.
Ah,
And we'll also be doing our Emmy predictions because the Emmys are right around the corner.
damn.
So there we go.
Again, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod, and @nostalgiapod on Twitter. We'll catch you next week.